r/no sleep, posted by U Frequency Junkie. My dad was an old school ham radio operator. Growing up, our basement was filled with buzzing, humming equipment and an eerie green glow from the monitors. He'd spend hours there, tapping into frequencies I didn't understand. 2 weeks ago, he passed away. While clearing out his radio gear, I accidentally turned on one of his setups. The static crackled, but within seconds, a whisper came through. "Help, me." The voice was faint but familiar. It sounded exactly like my dad. At first, I thought it was interference or maybe my imagination. But then it got clearer. "They're coming. Don't trust the light." Every night since, the radio has turned on by itself. The whispers have grown more frantic. Last night, he said something that froze my blood. "They're inside the house. Turn around." I didn't sleep. I stayed up with a knife, staring at the locked basement door, waiting for something or someone to come up those steps. This morning, I found a message scratched into the concrete wall downstairs. The whispers aren't me. Who have I been listening to? Let's not meet. Posted by user, Crying in Shadows. I suffer from night terrors. Every night, I wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, with visions of a shadowy figure at the foot of my bed. My doctor said it was stress and prescribed sleeping pills. They worked for a while, until last week. The first night, I went without dreams. I woke up to find dirt under my fingernails and scratches on my arms. I assumed I'd done it to myself. The second night, my neighbor called, complaining about me digging in their garden at 3 a.m. I checked my security camera. The footage showed me standing in my front yard, digging into the soil with my bare hands. But the part that made my stomach drop, someone else was standing behind me, guiding my hands. I locked every door and window, but last night, I woke up in the woods, miles from home, with a bloodied shovel in my hand. I don't own a shovel. I called the police. There was a missing person report in my area, a jogger who hadn't come home. I checked my fingernails again this morning. There's blood under them, and it isn't mine. Glitch in the Matrix, posted by user Whispering Walls. I moved into a cheap apartment with one catch. The lease had a roommate clause. "You'll have a roommate," the landlord explained, "but they'll never be in your way. They stick to their room." It sounded weird, but the rent was too good to pass up. True to the landlord's word, I've never seen my roommate. Their door is always shut, but I hear faint sounds at night. Typing, coughing, soft footsteps. 3 months in, I started noticing things out of place. My coffee mug moved to the counter overnight. My shoes were by the door, even though I always put them in the closet. Last night I came home late and saw their door cracked open. Curiosity got the better of me. Inside, there was no bed, no furniture, just dozens of photos of me, sleeping. Then I noticed something on the desk. My spare key. I don't have a roommate. I bought an antique doll at a flea market, charmed by its delicate lace dress and lifelike glass eyes. That night, I woke up to a soft, high-pitched giggle. The doll was no longer on the shelf. It was sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at me. "I don't like being locked away," it said, its tiny mouth moving. Panicking, I threw it into the fireplace. The flames roared unnaturally, and the doll shrieked, twisting in agony. Then, the fire went out, and a child's voice whispered behind me, "Now, you're my toy." I looked down. My fingers were stiff, my skin turning porcelain. The drive into the Rockies was like slipping into another world. Towering peaks lined the horizon, their snow-capped tips glinting in the sunlight like blades of ice. The winding road cut through a landscape so wild and untamed, it made the air in my lungs feel sharper, cleaner. When I reached the trailhead, I hesitated for a moment, staring at the dense pines ahead. It was late autumn, and the chill in the air promised snow. But I had come here to get away, to find quiet, to clear my head. There was no turning back. The trail began gently, weaving through a grove of aspens. Their golden leaves fluttered like coins, catching the sunlight and scattering it across the forest floor. The wind whispered through branches, carrying the earthy scent of damp wood and moss. I couldn't help but stop every so often to drink it all in. The sound of a distant stream, the crunch of leaves under my boots, even the faint rustle of unseen animals in the underbrush. It was also alive. As the hours passed, the trail climbed steeper. The aspens gave way to ancient spruces and firs, their boughs heavy with tufts of snow. Sunlight filtered down in dappled patches, illuminating the forest floor like a natural mosaic. I followed the sound of the stream and found it at last, a ribbon of crystalline water cutting through the trees. The trail narrowed after that, winding along the edge of a ridge. The valley below was a sea of green, broken only by the silver thread of the stream I'd just left behind. The air was thinner here, colder, but it felt good, cleansing. By the time I set up camp in a small clearing, the sun was sinking behind the peaks. The sky turned from pale blue to a deep, fiery orange, and the first stars began to appear. I pitched my tent beneath a circle of towering pines, their needles forming a soft bed beneath me. It was subtle at first, a faint, metallic tang in the air that didn't belong. I sat up, listening. The forest had gone quiet. No owls, no crickets, nothing but the low hiss of the wind through the trees. And then, the howl. It was low and guttural, rising and falling in a way that made my skin crawl. It didn't sound like a wolf or any animal I'd ever heard. It echoed off the mountains, carrying through the trees like some ancient call. I should have stayed in the tent, but something drew me closer, some primal curiosity I couldn't ignore. The air grew colder as I followed the trail. The trees seemed taller here, their branches like twisted fingers reaching for the sky. My breath hung in the air, each exhale loud in the unnatural quiet. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a deer. It stood among the trees, its antlers stretching high into the sky. But then it moved. It wasn't a deer. The creature was impossibly tall, its emaciated body hunched, as if it had been broken and rebuilt wrong. Its skin was stretched taut over protruding bones, gray and mottled like decaying flesh. Its antlers were tangled with moss and what looked like scraps of cloth, and its eyes, oh God, its eyes, glowed faintly, like sickly embers in the dark. Fear struck me. I was terrified to breathe. What if it heard me? It opened its mouth, and I saw rows of jagged, yellow teeth. Blood, fresh, dark, and glistening, dripped from its maw, staining the snow at its feet. And then it spoke.
Run!
The voice wasn't human. It was layered, as if a dozen voices were speaking at once, all of them wrong. I didn't hesitate, I ran. The forest blurred around me, branches clawing at my face and arms as I stumbled blindly down the trail. Behind me, I heard the snapping of branches, the wet clicking sound of something moving, something fast. I don't know how I made it back to the trailhead. When I burst into the parking lot, gasping for air, my car was still there, dusted with snow. I didn't look back. Even now, safe in my apartment, I can't escape the memory. The metallic tang of its breath, the way its glowing eyes bored into me. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear it again. A whisper. It started with whispers in the attic. Faint, indistinguishable words that I convinced myself were the wind. But then I heard footsteps, heavy and deliberate. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a flashlight and climbed the creaky stairs. The attic door was ajar, and as I pushed it open, the light flickered. "Who's there?" I called, my voice trembling. The room was empty except for a dusty mirror in the corner. But as I turned to leave, the reflection showed a woman standing behind me, her eyes hollow, her mouth stitched shut. She lunged, but when I turned, there was nothing there. Only the faint sound of whispers growing louder. My phone buzzed at 3 a.m. It was my sister's name on the screen. "I'm outside," she said. "Let me in." My heart stopped. My sister had been dead for 2 years. "Where are you?" I whispered. "Outside," she repeated, her voice cracking. "It's so cold." I went to the door trembling and opened it. No one was there. My phone buzzed again. Another call. This time the voice was different. Deep. Angry. "Why did you let her in?" I turned. My sister stood behind me, her face bloated and decomposed. Her eyes locked on mine as she whispered, "It hurts to be buried alive." The last notification. I was scrolling mindlessly through my phone when a notification popped up. "You have one unread message from yourself." Curious, I opened it. Stop scrolling. Look at the window. I froze. The curtains were drawn, but the message sent a chill down my spine. I typed back, "Who is this?" Seconds later, another message. "Look now, before it's too late." Against my better judgment, I peeked through the curtain. My reflection stared back at me from the glass, but it wasn't copying me. My reflection smirked and mouthed 2 words. "Got you." My phone buzzed one last time. Good luck getting out. The lights flickered, and the world outside the window faded into black. I wasn't sure if I was still in my home, or if I had just taken my reflection's place. All right, so, you know that creepy neighbor I told you about? The guy who stares out his window every night? Let me tell you what just happened. I was sitting on my couch, minding my own business, when I noticed him again. He's just standing there, staring at me through his window. At first, I thought, okay, maybe he's just weird, but this time it was different. I got up, went to the window, and stared back. That's when I realized his window wasn't reflecting anything. No lights, no curtains, no me. And then I saw it. Someone else in his room, standing right behind him. They looked at me, smiled, and turned off the light. This happened when I was driving home late one night. There's this stretch of road near my house with nothing but empty fields. I saw a kid standing in the middle of one, just staring at my car as I passed. No houses around. No reason for a kid to be out there at 3 a.m. I slowed down, but something about the way they were standing freaked me out. Their head was tilted too far to the side, and their arms just dangled, limp. Then they started walking toward my car, fast, like sprinting, but without moving their arms. I floored it, heart racing, and in my rearview mirror, I swear I saw the kid standing in the middle of the road, waving, with a hand that wasn't theirs. I don't really know where to begin because it all seems so ridiculous now. But at the time, it felt as real as you and me talking. It started about a month ago, when I moved into this old Victorian house. You know, one of those places that look charming from the outside, but creaks and groans like it's haunted by every single person who ever lived there. I rented the place because it was cheap, and I needed somewhere quiet to focus on my writing. The owner didn't mention anything unusual about the house. No tragic history, no weird deaths, just an old house. But I should have known. I should have felt it from the second I walked in. The air was thick, like it was pressing down on me, suffocating me just a little bit. At first, I brushed it off as my nerves. Moving into a big, empty house all alone, after all, can make anyone a little jumpy. But then, the mirror showed up. It was in the attic, covered in dust and leaning against the wall. The frame was this dark, polished wood, intricate with carvings that looked like vines. Or maybe they were snakes. Hard to tell. I remember running my fingers over the carvings, feeling how cold they were, even though the attic was stifling hot. The glass was hazy, so dirty I could barely see my reflection at first. But something in me told me not to wipe it clean, like I didn't want to see myself in that mirror. Not really, but curiosity won out, as it always does. I grabbed an old cloth and started wiping away the grime. That's when I noticed it. The air shifted, not like a breeze, but the atmosphere in the room changed. It got heavier, colder. My skin prickled, but I ignored it. Stupidly, I ignored it. When I finally cleared the glass, there I was, staring back at myself. But I wasn't just staring. It felt like the reflection was off, like it was me, but not me. The eyes, my eyes, were darker, hollow, and the reflection didn't move in sync with me. Not exactly. There was a delay, just the smallest lag, but enough to notice. I should have walked away then, should have covered the damn thing back up and forgotten about it. But I didn't. I just stood there, staring at myself. And that's when I heard it. At first, it was so faint. I thought it was just the wind or the house settling. But no. It was coming from the mirror. A whisper. No, more like a voice trying to whisper but being choked back. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest, and leaned in closer, stupidly trying to make out what it was saying. It was my name, whispered so faintly, but it was my name. I jerked back, but the reflection, it didn't. My reflection just stayed there, watching me, eyes dark, mouth slightly open like it was waiting for something. I ran downstairs, slammed the door to the attic shut, and tried to shake it off. I told myself it was my mind playing tricks, the stress of moving, maybe too much caffeine. But the whispers, they didn't stop. At first, it was only when I was near the attic. I could hear it, even through the door. My name, over and over again. But then it started at night, when I was lying in bed, my heart pounding in the silence. The voice would seep into my dreams, pulling me back to that damn mirror. I'd see myself, standing in front of it, only it wasn't me. It was the reflection, staring at me with those hollow eyes, whispering my name, and each time I'd wake up drenched in sweat, gasping for air. A few days ago, I found the attic door wide open in the morning. I never opened it. I never even went near it after that first day, but there it was, yawning like a mouth, waiting. The whispers were louder now. I could hear them even when I was downstairs, like they were crawling through the walls, trying to find me. My name, and something else. I don't know what, but I could feel the words clawing at my mind, trying to pull me back to that mirror. I haven't gone up there since, but I know. I know it's waiting for me. Whatever is in that mirror wants me to come back. And I'm scared that if I do, I won't be the one looking out anymore. The woods behind our house always felt alive, but not in a peaceful, nature is beautiful kind of way. No, there was something wrong about them. The trees twisted unnaturally, their branches like skeletal hands reaching out. The deeper you went, the more the air seemed to grow thick, suffocating, like something was pressing down on you, waiting. My parents were always strict about us going too far, but that night, Ben and I decided to push our luck. Summer nights get boring, and we wanted something more exciting. Camping out in the woods felt like a rite of passage, especially when our friends weren't around to stop us. We set up the tent in a clearing, not too far from the house, but far enough to feel isolated. Ben was nervous, I could tell. His eyes kept darting around, scanning the dark gaps between the trees, but he wouldn't admit it. We lit a small fire, roasted marshmallows, and tried to act like it was just another camping trip. But there was a heaviness in the air, like the woods were holding their breath. After an hour or two, the fire had dimmed to a glow. The silence was so thick, it felt like it was squeezing the life out of everything. I lay back, staring at the stars, trying to relax. That's when I heard it. A snap. A twig, somewhere off in the darkness. It wasn't an animal noise. It was deliberate, slow. I sat up, my heart thudding. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Ben nodded. His face had gone pale, eyes wide. He didn't move, just stared into the black void between the trees, where the firelight couldn't reach. I shone the flashlight in the direction of the sound, but the beam flickered weakly, as if the darkness was thicker than it should be. Nothing, just trees. "Maybe it's just the wind," I said, but my voice trembled. Ben was frozen, staring at something just beyond the trees. "I saw someone," he whispered. My stomach dropped. "What?" Ben's voice was barely audible. There was someone out there, watching us." I felt my chest tighten. I scanned the trees again, but there was nothing. Then, from somewhere deeper in the woods, we heard it. My mother's voice. Ben shot up, eyes wide, trembling. The voice was unmistakable, but it was off, like someone had recorded her and slowed it down, distorting it. The words dragged through the air, each syllable stretching unnaturally. "She's not out here," I said quickly, trying to pull him back, but he was already on his feet. "I heard her," he insisted, tears welling up in his eyes. She's calling me. Before I could stop him, he ran toward the trees. I stumbled after him, my flashlight flickering in and out. The voice called again, this time louder, closer. But it didn't sound human anymore. It was twisted, garbled, like something trying to mimic her but not getting it right. We crashed through the trees, the branches slashing at our arms and faces. I caught up to Ben just as he reached a small clearing, panting, his breath coming in frantic gasps. That's when we saw it. At the edge of the clearing, something crouched low, barely visible in the shadows. It looked like a person at first, roughly the shape of one anyway, but its limbs were wrong. Too long, too thin, like they'd been stretched out. Its head was cocked at an unnatural angle, its mouth open far too wide, grinning. It was wearing my mother's face, but it wasn't her. The skin hung loosely, sagging, as if someone had peeled it off and draped it over something else. Its eyes were wrong too, solid black, empty, like it was staring at us through the mask.
Ben, come here!
It croaked, its voice warping, struggling to form the words. The skin on its face twitched as it spoke, like it didn't quite fit. Ben stood frozen, tears streaming down his face. I grabbed his arm, yanking him back, but he wouldn't move. "Mom," he whimpered. The thing took a step forward, its bones cracking audibly with each movement, the skin slipping, stretching over its misshapen form. "No," I whispered, pulling Ben harder. "We have to go." But Ben just stared, shaking, as the thing mimicked my mother's voice again. More desperate now, more broken. "Ben, come here." It started to crawl toward us, its limbs bending the wrong way, its hands, long jagged fingers, dragging through the dirt, pulling itself closer. Its black eyes never blinked, never wavered. I screamed, finally breaking Ben's trance, and we bolted back toward the tent. The sound of something massive crashing through the trees followed us, its voice garbling and warping into a series of guttural sounds that no human throat could make. We didn't stop until we reached the house, but even then, as we slammed the door and locked it, we could still hear it, scratching. Low, raspy breathing, just outside. The next morning, our parents didn't believe us, and we refused to go back into the woods. But some nights, when everything's quiet, we still hear it at the edge of the trees, scratching. I'm not really sure how to explain this without sounding crazy, but something happened last night, and I feel like I need to share it. I'm sitting here at my computer, typing this on Reddit, hoping someone else has experienced something similar. I wasn't supposed to be alone. My mom had to leave in the middle of the night to pick up my little sister. She got sick at her friend's sleepover, so Mom left around 11:30 p.m., told me she'd be back in an hour or so, and said I could stay up a little later. I thought it'd be a breeze. After all, I'm old enough to stay home by myself, and I've done it plenty of times before. At first, I just watched cartoons to kill the time, but around midnight, I started feeling a bit uneasy. You know that feeling when you think someone's watching you? Yeah, that. I glanced at the window, half expecting to see something, but there was nothing. The street outside was quiet, just the shadows from the trees swaying in the dim light of the street lamp. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid. I kept watching TV, but then I heard it. A soft tap, tap, tap coming from the kitchen. It wasn't regular, like water dripping. It felt deliberate. At first, I thought maybe it was just the house settling, but then I realized the tapping was coming from the back door. My heart started racing as I muted the TV and crept towards the kitchen. As soon as I got close, the tapping stopped. I stood there for a second, listening. It felt eerie, like the house had gone completely silent. Just to be safe, I flicked on the back porch light and peered out. Nothing. The yard was empty, and I felt ridiculous for even getting spooked. I went back to the living room, determined to shake off the creepiness, but then I heard it again. Tap, 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 this time from the window above the kitchen sink. I don't know why, but I felt drawn to check it out. I walked over, trying to act brave, but my heart was pounding like crazy. I pulled back the curtain, but there was nothing out there, just darkness. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something move across the yard, something fast. I froze, staring into the shadows, but it was gone before I could make it out. Panic surged through me. I checked my phone for a signal. Nothing. I wanted to call my mom, but I was cut off from the outside world. Trying to stay calm, I locked the back door and double-checked every window. As I was about to settle back down, I heard it again, the back door rattling. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a knock. It was the handle turning, as if someone was trying to get in. I was paralyzed with fear, staring at the door. Maybe it was Mom, I thought, but the way it rattled didn't feel right. I could feel the weight of whatever was out there pressing down on me. I ran to the door, checked the lock again, and threw a chair in front of it. My heart raced as the rattling turned to banging, harder and louder, as if someone was getting desperate. I screamed, but I was alone in the house. And then, footsteps. They weren't outside. They were coming from upstairs. I've never felt so terrified in my life. No one else was supposed to be here, and yet, the creaking sound echoed down the hallway. Each step, deliberate. Each pause, haunting. I grabbed the landline phone and dialed my mom's number, but there was no dial tone. I could feel panic rising in my chest. The footsteps grew closer, and I didn't know what to do. I bolted to the bathroom, locked the door, and crouched down on the floor. Every little creak sent jolts of fear through me. I was convinced I was imagining things, that I was just being paranoid. But then it stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. I pressed my ear against the door, listening for any sound, and then I heard it. A voice, low and distorted. It whispered my name. I scrambled back, heart racing.
Let me in.
I couldn't breathe. The doorknob started to rattle, slowly at first, then faster. I backed away, tears streaming down my face. The voice came again, clearer this time. Please, let me in. That's when I finally lost it. I could feel the door shaking as whatever was on the other side tried to push its way in. I don't know how long I stayed in there, terrified, but eventually I heard my mom's voice calling from downstairs. When she got home, she found me huddled in the bathroom, crying. I tried to explain everything that happened, but she thought I just had a nightmare. She couldn't understand. But I know what I heard. I know what I felt. Something was in the house with me last night, and I can't shake this feeling that it's still out there. So here I am, sharing my story on Reddit, hoping someone else has been through something similar. If you have, please let me know. I can't shake the fear that whatever it was, it's still watching, still waiting for me to be alone again.